1 second. I think our door is latched.
All right, ready?
Yeah.
Cool. All right, so today we're going to be talking about soft field takeoffs. The objective for today for the private and the commercial pilot is to perform a takeoff on a soft surface in a specified configuration while taking the weight of the airplane off the wheels into the wings using proper back pressure while maintaining proper situational awareness during takeoff and proper use of coordination. Why we want to do soft field takeoffs. So if you go to somewhere like Oshkosh or like any sort of fly-in where they have soft fields, whether it's grass or dirt, or even if you go to Fraser Lake, right, our local grass airport, then you'll want to know how to do a soft field takeoff. And the idea, right, is to shift that weight off the wheels and onto the wings to minimize that ground drag. So the first thing that we'll go over is aerodynamics, and as I just mentioned, ground drag. So taking the weight off the wheels, tightening the nose, keeping that tail nice and low, trying to reduce that vibration during takeoff, and like reducing that vibration could prevent damage to the nose wheel and decrease that ground roll, right? If you have a lot of drag, right, on your wheels, then you have a longer takeoff distance. So, and that's what we wanted to eliminate. The next thing that we're going to go over is ground effect. So to improve, ground effect improves aircraft performance when low to the ground at about the height of the aircraft's wingspan. And ground effect is pretty much due, draw it here, this back of the plane. It's pretty much due to like wingtip vortices, and essentially as you're creating lift, you'll have some downwash, and you're supposed to have upwash that wraps around the wingtip. But while you're in ground effect, because of that interference of the ground, you're not getting those wingtip vortices, and therefore it creates this little cushion, this bubble during takeoff.
Is it essentially pushing at the ground?
Yeah, it's essentially pushing at the ground, and and that interference from the ground is what kind of gives it that bubble effect.
Okay.
If that makes any sense.
Yeah.
So we're going to be using ground effect during the soft field takeoff as sort of an aid. So during ground effect, I could probably show it to you over here. So your lift is improved at a lower angle of attack because you have induced drag. Induced drag is the drag produced by the airfoil, and it's pretty much due to an increase in speed or an increase in angle of attack. And so in ground effect, like I just said, you're at a lower angle of attack but still producing a larger amount of lift. That reduced drag that you feel may give the impression that you could lift off and climb out of ground effect sooner, but that's not the case. During the takeoff, for the soft field takeoff, you should stay in ground effect, use that, and accelerate right to VX or to VY, and then climb out. And I'll explain more of that later when we get into the picture. Another point that we have to do is to maintain coordination. As with all of our maneuvers, right? We're always talking about right foot, and and putting enough rudder application to counteract those left turning tendencies. So we've talked about in the past spaghetti, spiraling strip stream, P factor, gyroscopic precession, and torque. And during a takeoff with a lot of back pressure, right, during the takeoff, all those tendencies are very much pronounced.
How come you need back pressure? For this
Oh,
kind of
sorry. I'll talk about it more later, but you're going to use that back pressure to relieve that weight on the wheels and onto the wing and to protect that nose.
Okay.
But I'll get into that more in a bit. So performance. So our soft wheel takeoff, yes, it starts on the ground, but it also starts back at back during your flight planning. So in section 5 of your POH or your AFM, you're going to use the short field takeoff distance chart. I tend to use the 2,500 50 pound chart. If you want to be more accurate, of course, you have it at 2,400 pounds, and you also have it at 2,200 pounds. And you already know how to calculate takeoff distance, right? So let's just make a quick example. So yeah, if you're taking off from like Reed Hill View, which is a 135 foot field elevation airport, then you could use the pressure altitude at sea level, or you could round up to 1,000. Probably round up to 1,000 might be your best bet, just to give you a little more cushion in your performance calculations. Let's say it's like a warmer day, it's warmer than standard, we'll use 20 degrees. So now take a look at all those notes. So note 1 says short field technique as specified in section 4. You can reference section 4 and then reference these conditions. So you'll lift off at 51 knots. We'll try to remember that. That's pretty much our rotate speed during the soft field takeoff. And then the speed to clear a 50-foot obstacle, which I'll repeat again, is 56 knots. So now as we go down through the notes, the last note says, for operation on dry grass runways, increase distances by 15% on the ground roll figure. So if you want to demonstrate that for me, right? So you did 20 degrees at a pressure altitude of 1,000 feet.
I did
right?
the 1090.
1090.
Yeah,
okay,
at 1,000 feet.
Yep, at 1,000 feet, which is 1090 is just our regular ground roll figure, and then you add 15%, which comes out to 1,253, right? So that's good. If it's a wet grass runway, maybe increase it by another 5.
Yeah.
Even if it's muddy, snowy, like depending on the condition, you may want to increase that value by a little more.
Okay.
But still within Reed Hill View's runway length of 3,100 feet, right? So you're good to go. So to kind of reiterate, in your performance calculation, you're going to use a short field takeoff chart. You're going to consider weight. You can use max gross weight if you like to kind of give more cushion in your calculations. You can go up in your pressure altitude to accomplish the same, give you a little more cushion, and then read those notes. Especially the biggest emphasis in those notes are that last note, note 4, which asks you to increase your ground roll distance. Okay, so next thing is division of attention and situational awareness. So if you're at a soft field, you should be considering the condition of your runway surface. So whether it's grass, snow, you may even want to consider weather that day or weather in the previous days to see if that field is pretty soft. If able, you can walk the field or like walk the runway if possible, see if it's pretty soft. If it's during the summer, you know, at like Fraser Lake or something, then maybe it's a much harder surface. Grass height, of course, plays a factor. And that'll also affect your ground roll.
The higher the grass, the longer the roll.
Yeah, so if the grass is like much taller and a little less maintained, you will have a longer ground roll. But we're trying to minimize that, right, with our technique that we'll get into in a bit. When you do your run up, you want to do it on a harder surface, if possible, away. If it's away from the field, if there's a patch of cement somewhere, maybe a compass rose, something like on a harder surface, try to do that. And then just making note of the traffic in the pattern and listening to your CTAF. If you're at a towered airport, which there are very few with grass runways, such as Bozeman in, I believe, Montana, then just having some like situational awareness there, that does help you. So making those like appropriate radio calls, and then if you're at a towered airport, then maybe potentially making that, if your run up area is close enough, then making that ready for takeoff call at like the very last minute. Because once you're moving, you want to stay moving, keeping that momentum to get you onto the runway. Another thing to consider is during taxi. So during taxi, you want to keep full back pressure, protecting that nose. You also want to consider crosswinds, right? So our quartering headwinds, quartering tailwinds, and like what to do, right? Do you think you can give me an example of what to do in normal operations?
Normal operations would just be ailerons neutral.
For a quartering headwind, right?
Yeah.
Not for a tail wheel. Slightly different, right? For a tail wheel. What about for a Cessna?
Do you change the position of the elevator for Cessnas?
So in a quartering headwind, in a Cessna, tricycle landing gear, right?
Right.
For quartering headwind, just aileron into the wind.
Right, into the wind.
And then elevator neutral. But if you're getting a quartering tailwind, you're diving away. So.
Okay.
So elevator forward, and then.
So you want it's not into the wind anymore. It would be away from the wind. Or
Yeah.
I mean,
so you're diving away, because when you're diving away, this is still for like normal operation, right? Let's just try to remember that.
Right.
When you're diving away, this aileron, if you're diving to the left, that right aileron's down.
Right. Is the
and
wing
keeping that wing down,
that
right?
way or that way?
It's quartering tailwind.
Okay.
So a quartering tailwind from the right, you're diving away to the left,
Okay.
which means right aileron down.
Okay.
So now, to kind of clear this up for soft field operations, is that with that back pressure in place, you're not taking that away. So you don't have, with the quartering headwind, you don't have elevators neutral, but you're still doing aileron into the wind.
Okay. And then the other would be you still have backstick, but it's away from the wind.
Backstick, but away from the wind.
Okay.
But
So the only difference
just
is you're
keeping in mind, right?
Yeah.
How I like to remember is this. If you have a quartering tailwind from the right, and you have that back pressure, put your thumbs up. You're diving away from the wind. Thumbs up means aileron up on the left side.
Right.
If you're pointing to the left.
Yeah.
And so that means if aileron's up on the left side, aileron's down on the right side.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So that's the difference. You keep that back pressure, but you're still either going into it in a head or diving away from it in a tail.
The difference is you just keep the back pressure the whole
Yes,
time.
but you're keeping that back pressure the whole time.
Okay. That's very similar to tailless.
Oh, I didn't know that. Cool.
You've got back pressure the whole time.
That makes sense because you want to keep the tail down, right? Cool. Okay. So we talked about crosswind corrections during taxi. Crosswind correction also for takeoff. Same thing, right? Because now when you're in the takeoff, you have the back pressure. Aileron into the wind, right? Because you're always taking off into the wind in most cases.
Yeah.
And then slowly relieving that back pressure and relieving that crosswind correction as you accelerate, right?
Right.
Okay. Another thing to think about, wake turbulence. Now, in most cases, wake turbulence shouldn't be an issue because you're not gonna go to a grass field or a soft field with heavier aircraft in front of you. Now, is it possible? Yes. I'm sure there are old warbirds out there at these fly-ins that are probably much bigger than you and generate a lot of wake turbulence.
Fraser Lake has a couple every once in a while.
Right?
Yeah.
And they fly in. There's also, if for some reason you're at a grass or a dirt field and you're taking off before a C-130 or even a C-17, right, military aircraft,
Yeah.
then those generate a lot of wake turbulence too. So if you're uncomfortable, you don't have to make the takeoff. But if you do have to make the takeoff and you're bold, do you remember what you do? So let's just talk just for takeoff. Where should you rotate? Or in this case, where should you lift off, actually?
I believe it's before.
Yeah.
Because weight goes down.
Yes.
So we want to, yeah. And then landing would be after.
Yes. But those aircraft, especially like military aircraft, they're doing potentially an unrestricted climb. Who knows what they're doing?
Yeah.
In most cases, I'd probably even skip it. I'd probably say unable, and I'd wait it out.
Yeah.
Right? A few minutes, right? To wait for wake turbulence to dissipate. All right. The next thing to consider are obstacles. Grass fields could be tucked within trees. We always say a 50-foot obstacle. In most cases, it'd probably be no more than that. It's probably like airport regulation. But with that emphasis is knowing to clear the obstacle at 56 knots. Once you clear the obstacle, pitch for VX or for VY. The safe speed to retract flaps is over 60 knots. So VX already guarantees you that. Then you can retract your flaps. Now you've cleaned up the aircraft and you're good to climb.
Is there a certain altitude that you would retract flaps at?
Like a safe altitude?
Yeah.
So in most cases, like such as being in the pattern, if you're like in the pattern, then you could clean up at about 300 feet below traffic pattern altitude. Okay. Now, if you're doing a straight out departure, or like something like that, or even a downwind departure, and you're leaving the area, maybe doing it maybe at 500 feet is probably safe.
Okay.
So just remembering that you're clear of your obstacles, and you're at a safe speed, and maybe even considering that safe altitude. So if you're well above your obstacle, you're probably good.
Okay, but you don't want to retract them before you clear your obstacle.
Not at all, and you want to retract them well after.
Okay.
Just so you're sure, right?
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, and then making sure that you're at a safe speed. I think it's really a matter of having this safe speed because you'll have a positive rate of climb at these speeds.
Yeah.
Okay. So now let's get into the maneuver, which I've kind of foreshadowed, a lot of the things. So we talked about taxi and keeping that back pressure. When you taxi onto the runway, after your run up, your before takeoff checklist, your final items and whatnot, you're gonna make a nice big arc, and you're gonna keep that speed and you're gonna keep that momentum. Thank you. So back pressure. Can't see, right? So having that back pressure during taxi, protecting that nose, nice big arc. You can even go out. You can even make nice big arc onto the runway. Then, situate yourself. If your runway, for example, like at Reed Hill View, you'll simulate this. If you see 3-1, on the numbers. On the grass field, you're not gonna see numbers, but you'll verify with your compass heading indicator. Then you know you're in the right place. So during the takeoff, you'll have back pressure, right, still, and then you'll slowly begin to put in full power. When you have full power, make note. .23 in the Cessna, 2400 RPM. Engine instruments in the green. You have green. Oh, well, on a green board, it's not going to work. Engine instruments in the green. And as you're accelerating, airspeed alive, right? As always. So making those call outs. And as you're accelerating, you're going to relieve that back pressure. If you have crosswind correction, you're going to relieve that. After liftoff, you're going to start to level out in ground effect. And after leveling off in ground effect, you're going to accelerate to, you'll lift off at, man, what does POH say? 51.
That's our rotate speed?
Yes.
Okay.
At 51 knots. Oh. That reminds me. Apologize. You're rotating at 51 because you have flaps in. So during your before takeoff checklist, you're going to have a step that's going to tell you to set flaps to 10 degrees. That's going to increase your lift, a little bit of drag, not too much. And that's why you'll be able to rotate at 51 as compared to your normal rotate speed, which is what?
55?
Yeah, nice. And so you'll be able to rotate a little sooner. Now, like I said, you want to level off in ground effect because you have less drag, because you need less lift. You'll have more lift for that same angle of attack, and you don't want to climb out of ground effect prematurely, or else you have the potential of settling and coming back down. And on a soft surface, you can risk damaging something, right? So after liftoff, you can climb. You will climb using VX or VY. VX for any obstacles, or in the case of a short field, some soft fields are short fields, and we've discussed the short field method in the past, but now this is a slightly modified technique, but principles are very similar, especially with flaps in. The obstacle clearance speed is 56 knots, as we've talked about, for a 50-foot obstacle. And then when clear, you can climb using, now you can go back to climbing using VX, 61 knots, or climb using VY, 74 knots.
So if you rotate at 51, you get into ground effect, and 55 is the normal rotate speed. So as long as you hit 56, you're able to continue climbing?
I would climb using 61 if you really want to clear an obstacle, and then if you have to in the air, slow it down to 56.
So 61 first. If we're not able to
Yeah.
clear it, then 56.
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
And then once you clear the obstacles, you're at a safe speed, and we even talked about a safe altitude.
Mm-hmm.
Flap 0.
And VY is no flaps on?
Yes.
Okay.
And after that, yeah, you can climb using 74, and then you can do your, right after 1,000 feet, you can do your cruise climb.
which is like 90 or something.
80, 85, 90, sure.
Yeah.
Okay. See if I covered everything.
What is my stall speed at? You know, off the top of your head.
Well, I would have to look in the POH.
Let's see if I can
It's like 40. With full flaps, it's 40.
Okay.
So without flaps,
Oh,
it's
yeah.
48. With one notch of flaps, it's probably a little lower, but not much.
Okay. That's power idle. Okay, so it's relatively.
Yeah.
We're above it at least.
Yes,
Okay.
well above it. So even at 56, right now you can climb and you can clear the obstacle.
Okay.
That's why it gives you that value. It seems pretty low, even
Right.
for me, you know,
But stall speed is lower.
Yeah, stall speed is much lower. Like you're in the slow flight range here, really close.
Okay.
Okay, and we talked about that too, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So with all this, if you have to reject the takeoff, you have your flaps in, your one notch of flaps in. That's a small benefit because that keeps the weight off the wheels and onto the wings. If you have to reject the takeoff, start putting that back pressure back in. Try to maintain that speed and taxi off the runway. Nice big arc.
Is our rule speed going? It's going to be. We need less runway to land than normal, right?
For what?
So if we're coming in-
to land?
Yeah, because it's a botch land or botch takeoff or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, we want as much runway as we can,
Sure.
but theoretically, it's less roll.
Yeah, your ground roll for takeoff is much shorter than your actual takeoff. Your landing roll is much shorter.
Than your
So if you were to do a botch or if you were to reject a takeoff, it would be even less than that.
Right. Okay.
605 feet.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry, that was off topic, but it was.
Yeah. That's like a different lesson meant that like we can go over later, but 605 feet.
Yeah.
And
much
so
shorter.
if you were to reject the takeoff, it would be even shorter distance than that.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. And like I said, back pressure, weight off the wheels, protect the nose. Nice big arc, taxi off the runway.
Right.
Okay. And last thing that we'll go over is noise abatement procedures. At Reed Hillview, since you'll be simulating all your grass field takeoffs there, 31 right, has after taking off the runway and after you'll turn to heading 340, flying in between the schools, and then that should cover your noise abatement procedures. Okay, common errors. Not doing performance calculations per the POH or the AFM. Insufficient back pressure during taxi and takeoff. Not maintaining directional control at a high power setting and at a higher angle of attack because you have that back pressure in. Those left turn tendencies are a little more pronounced. So adequate right rudder. Not cross-checking instruments and giving those proper call-outs. That's why I emphasize that here. Not accelerating in ground effect. Like I said, if you prematurely left off in ground effect, you could settle. Why? Because your drag increases and then lift at the same angle of attack decreases. So you do require more speed to get the lift you need to climb out of ground effect. Insufficient pitch while climbing out of ground effect. There's also that. So you may pitch a little forward to stay in ground effect to help you accelerate. It may even feel like you're even pitching down, but you know, like the motor's like providing you enough thrust. It wants to get out of it, but it's our job not to let it, and so it can accelerate. Not setting proper aircraft configuration, even like I almost missed here, setting those flaps to 10.
We said that's somewhere in a checklist, right?
Yes, so it's in your in your short field takeoff. It's in your takeoff checklist, and there's like a little short field section where you'll put 10. But if you read in your normal procedures, section, I believe section 4, there's a small paragraph on soft field takeoffs, and it does tell you to set the flaps to 10.
Okay.
So just remember to do it. And then after clear of your obstacles and you're at a safe speed, or even if there are no obstacles, not cleaning up the airplane and not like retracting those flaps. So that's it for completion standard. For common errors. So completion standards. So for the private and the commercial pilot is to demonstrate soft field takeoffs with proper performance calculations, taxi and takeoff configuration, and aircraft cleanup after takeoff while maintaining proper airspeed and heading control. The tolerances are for the private pilot is +10, -5 knots, and for the commercial it's ± 5 knots. So when we fly tomorrow, now we'll meet at this aircraft. You'll already have it pre-flighted, and we'll go back inside, do like a quick brief, and we'll talk about the lesson for the day. We'll probably quiz you on some things, and then if you have any questions, yeah, go ahead and ask. Then we'll go up. Before that first takeoff, I'll demonstrate it, and then we'll stay in the pattern for that day. And then I'll have you show it to me, and then any coaching that you need, I'll let you know. And we'll come back down, and we'll do like a little post-flight brief, and we'll talk about how you felt about the maneuver, or about the soft field takeoff. And any suggestions, if I have any like suggestions for you, I'll let you know, and then give you your next reading assignment. Cool?
Cool.
Any questions?
No, I think that pretty much answered most of it. I might have some tomorrow.
Okay, cool. Sounds good. Yeah, bring your questions. Thanks.
All right, thanks.